Welcome to the SmartAging podcast. SmartAging is a part of European Union Interact funding under the Baltic Sea region, providing expertise and knowledge and combining them from Finland, Sweden, Germany and Poland with the aim of improving assisted living facilities and especially the communal areas not taking part of the healthcare side of itself. My name is Pasi Rantanen, I come from Iigaia, Finland, and I will be your host in this session. Today I will be joined by Pauli Liiri, I would say old friend and old colleague in mentoring of multiple companies. I'm really happy to have him here with me. So welcome Pauli, great to have you here.
Thank you, Pasi.
And of course we met during the past 10 years in many different cases. Some have been more official, some have been less official, but would you like to give some kind of description of yourself? Why are you sitting here today with me doing this podcast?
Sure. My name is Pauli Liiri and I work as tax advisor at KPMG Finland, and I work with manager-owned businesses. I talk with entrepreneurs all the time about their business and about their wealth planning, things relating to taxation and legal issues, for example, risk management and so on.
And that's why many people might think, why is a tax professional in a podcast about assisted living, Interact funding, etc. But the reason is that we've both been mentoring a lot of startups and companies for years. And that's the role and, let's say, perspective you're bringing today.
Yeah, and I see many times with the startups that we have been mentoring that risk management issues, for example, are the least interesting part of their planning on their growth plan.
And biggest reason for failure.
Maybe, that can be.
So the topic I would like to talk today is piloting, and especially why piloting fails quite often. Our project is entering the pilot phase in Germany and in Finland, and I would like to hear your, let's say, insight. What could be going wrong or not?
Well, I would say that the main reason on the cases that I have been reviewing or have been somehow integrated with has dealt issues like surprises in the financing and the budgeting itself for the whole life cycle of the project is really important. And also sometimes it seems that all the shareholders or the people who are managing the pilot become a little bit with different views on how to proceed. And if we have these kind of situations that become blocks, that can really affect also the business.
That is actually exactly the point, the funding and the life cycle. I've seen so many startup pilots where nobody was actually thinking, what are we going to do after the pilot? And nobody's even thinking about, after the testing period, how we're going to go forward from that.
One of the main things that I have noticed is that a good idea or a good business plan always needs good resources. And most of the startups are made by one or two, maybe three max individuals who have an idea but not enough resources. And at this stage it would be so important that this individual or small group would have resources to do all the other stuff surrounding the idea or the business plan, like contracts, like connections, resource to financing, and so on. Because usually the people who are on top of the idea are employed by all other work also, and that may be exhausting.
Yeah, the startup life is kind of simple in that way, like you said, but if we think about the bigger corporations or public sector, you've been working with them quite a lot, I think more than with startups. So they must have different reasons for killing the pilots or actually failing the pilots. What is your insight on this side?
Well, I think in the bigger companies or in the public sector where the finance resources are usually better than in privately owned startups, I would say that the main issue would be the kind of a strategical thinking about the future of the business plan or the pilot. Mostly it is the question that in whose interest are we doing the pilot and what will be the future after it? Do the people who are engaged with the pilot really feel that this is going to be their future business also, or is it just like a different kind of thinking from the people who are running it or who are financing it? Do they feel like a same kind of purpose or the life cycle strategic thinking of the pilot?
That is really interesting, the ownership of the pilot, like what are the KPIs, what are we measuring? And like in our SmartAging project, we are building the social oasis. And in that pilot, we are testing quite a lot of new technology, different applications, materials, design. But the main question is not those, it's actually do the people in the assisted living, are they going to use the space? Are they loving the space? So it's a different KPIs for everybody.
Yeah, this is usually exactly the case that when in the bigger picture we find situation where the goals are different with the managing people working on the pilot and then the background owner and the company or agency that is financing the pilot. If the strategic thinking or the life cycle or the goal is different in these two persons, then usually a spin-off company could be one possible idea where the people who are engaged in taking forward this pilot that isn't actually working anymore for some reason for the original factor, then this can be a solution to that issue.
Yeah, that's actually interesting. If you think about the SmartAging project again, there's a lot of small companies involved in the piloting and testing. And of course, the project itself, we have our KPIs, we are measuring the impact, we are measuring how the people use the space, how they like the space. But if we talk about the individuals, the small companies or small details of these pilots, what would you say out of your expertise, what can those details be measured differently? You have any idea on that?
I think one interesting issue from the point of view of these small companies is that from their risk management point of view, the problem may be that if they provide their services or products to one big company only, or that represents the major part of their business, I think that's an important risk management question for those, because if this possibility to provide the products ends for any reason for this kind of sole big company, that may result in big difficulties in these small companies.
Yeah, that's a classic example. We've seen a lot of big companies with a turnover of tens of millions, but their only client is bringing, let's say, 80% of that turnover. And when this major customer just goes away, the company is ruined. And it's really good as a small company to prepare for this situation as well. I totally agree.
Yeah, because we have seen many times that the bigger companies have the overhead in telling what kind of payment terms there will be, how long contracts there will be. Usually these smaller companies don't have the resources in these kind of matters, but therefore it is highly important that when preparing the contracts and planning of the payment terms and budgeting for these smaller companies, it is so important to make these contracts in writing and with careful thought of how this one big client will affect our business.
And now we could actually go into your expertise. I've been in this situation myself. Back in the day, we were running a different kind of startup, and we got international client who wanted to have the payment terms in 120 days net. They are huge companies, so that was really difficult situation for us. And at the same time, they were demanding different kind of insurance policies of certain amounts of money, which were actually 5 times more than the legal limit of Finland. So how would you approach this when people actually start doing the first international deals with these major clients or something like that?
Yeah, especially in these international situations, I always like to say to startups that work internationally that I salute them for having first issue working with the Finnish tax administration, but also taking a step forward working with another tax administrations in foreign countries. And when you add into this scenario that you also have this international client that you provide the services or products to, and they have usually a lot more resources than a small company that is providing only a small part. And it is so important to use expertise legal advice at this point, because when you work in two jurisdictions, the law isn't always the same or clear in any way at all. And that's why you need to take somebody to help you, even though the small resources may not sound like it, that you want to hire a big law company or something like that, but that can save a lot of money in the future if you do.
Well, I would say, once again, we could talk for hours, but we have limited time. So this will be my final question and the conclusion of everything. And this is maybe a difficult question. If you think about any pilot, what is the point where the pilot actually turns into valuable investment of time and resources under your, let's say, umbrella of experiences?
Well, of course, when the pilot will survive by itself, that would mean that it is a form of business that can turn into its own business and or company. And as I like the numbers, of course, there are measurements that can be calculated, for example, on return on invest, how much you have invested in this, at what time will this pilot or the new business arising from it pay itself back. And this is usually how you evaluate companies also when you are selling a company. The buyer thinks that if we are investing this much, how long will it take that the company with its own resources will generate this amount of money, and after that the profit will be for the buyer.
Thank you, Pauli, very much for sharing this time from your really fully booked calendar. But now it's time for both of us to, let's say, transform ourselves into the holiday mood, celebrating the white nights of Finland, etc. And I think we deserve a lunch where we can talk about our favorite topics, relationships and love and kind of these soft aspects of life. Do you agree?
Don't forget the beer.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of SmartAging podcast. This is a good reminder that whatever we think about pilots or even the smallest details of the pilots, every detail has its own story, and it might be really different than what the project team itself thinked or even predicted during the pilot and preparation. I am really sure we're going to see some really successful stories from this project as well. We just don't know yet how, what and when.